I watched through my kitchen window as the new HOA president, Brenda walked straight onto my property and unplugged my generator cord from the outdoor outlet, wrapping it around her arm like she owned the damn thing. The power had been out for 6 hours across our neighborhood in Prescott, Arizona, thanks to a massive monsoon storm that had knocked down power lines all over town. My generator had been humming away peacefully, keeping my refrigerator running and my home office operational so I could finish the architectural drawings due Monday morning. I had specifically registered that generator with the Prescott Police Department 3 months ago when there had been a string of thefts in the area. The serial number, purchase receipt, and my information were all on file at the station. I had learned my lesson after someone stole my power tools from my garage 2 years back, and I never got them back because I couldn't prove ownership. I rushed outside, still holding my coffee mug. "Brenda, what the hell are you doing?" She turned to face me with that pinched expression she always wore during HOA meetings, the one that made her look like she was perpetually smelling something rotten. "William Quinn, this generator is in violation of the HOA aesthetic standards. The noise pollution alone is grounds for confiscation." "Confiscation? You can't just take my property. The power is out, in case you haven't noticed. The HOA bylaws clearly state that any equipment visible from the street that detracts from the community's visual harmony can be removed by the board. I'm exercising that authority." She tucked my heavy-duty extension cord under her arm more securely. The cord had cost me $80 at Home Depot just last month. I needed that specific gauge to safely power my equipment. "That's my generator cord, Brenda, not the generator itself. And even if you're talking about the generator, you can't just walk onto my property and take things. That's called theft. It's called enforcement. Read your HOA agreement, Section 12, Paragraph 4. She started walking toward her white Lexus parked on the street. I followed her, my anger building. "I've read every word of that agreement. Nothing in there gives you the right to steal my belongings. We're in the middle of a power outage. People need their generators. Then they should have gotten approval first. I'll be holding on to this until you submit the proper forms and pay the associated fees." She opened her trunk and tossed my cord inside like it was garbage. "What fees? There's no fee for using a generator during an emergency. There's a $50 application fee for any exterior electrical equipment, a $75 inspection fee, and a monthly $25 variance fee if approved. Did you submit your application? For a generator during a power outage? Are you insane?" Her eyes narrowed. "That's harassment, William. I could fine you for verbal abuse of an HOA officer." "An HOA officer? You're a retired dental hygienist who somehow got elected to bully the neighborhood. Give me my cord back or I'm calling the police." "Go ahead. They'll tell you this is a civil matter." She slammed her trunk shut and got into her car, driving away before I could say another word. I stood there in my driveway, absolutely fuming. My neighbor, Tom Patterson, walked over from his yard, shaking his head. He was 72, a retired electrician who had lived in this neighborhood for 20 years. "I saw the whole thing, Will. That woman is out of control. She tried to fine me last week because my rose bushes are allegedly 2 inches too tall according to some new standard she made up." "Did you pay it?" "Hell no. I told her to pound sand. She threatened to put a lien on my house." Can you believe that? I could believe it. Brenda had been elected HOA president 4 months ago after running an aggressive campaign about restoring property values and maintaining standards. What that actually meant was she had too much time on her hands and had decided to make everyone else miserable. She had already fined 8 families in our development. tried to ban children from riding bikes in the street after 5 p.m., and attempted to institute a rule requiring all garage doors to remain closed at all times, even while people were actively using their garages. "I'm calling the police anyway," I said. "She can't just take my property." Tom nodded. "Want me to give a statement? I saw everything." "That'd be great, thanks." I went inside and dialed the non-emergency police number. The dispatcher connected me to an officer who said he'd send someone over within the hour. True to their word, Officer Derek Martinez pulled up 45 minutes later in his patrol car. I met him in the driveway and explained the situation. Officer Martinez took notes on a small pad. "So she took your extension cord, not the generator itself, right? My generator is still here in the garage, but without that cord I can't run it. It's a specific gauge that handles the load safely. I need it. And you say you have the serial number registered with us?" "Yes. I registered it back in October after the theft problems in the area. Officer Sarah Chen helped me file the paperwork. The whole generator and all its accessories are registered, including that specific extension cord. It's a yellow 50-foot 12-gauge outdoor cord. I have the serial number etched on both ends and written down in my records." Officer Martinez nodded approvingly. "That's smart. Most people don't think to do that. Let me check our system." He went back to his patrol car and spent a few minutes on his computer. When he returned, he looked pleased. "You're right. Everything's in our system. Serial numbers, photos, the whole thing. That makes this straightforward. This is theft, plain and simple. HOA or not, she can't take registered property without your permission. Where does she live?" "2 streets over. 847 Sunset Ridge Drive." "I'll go have a conversation with her. Can you come with me to identify your property?" "Absolutely." Tom agreed to come along as a witness. The three of us headed over to Brenda's house in our respective vehicles. Her white Lexus was parked in the driveway, still warm from the short drive. Officer Martinez knocked on the door firmly. It took a minute, but Brenda finally opened it, her expression changing from annoyance to surprise when she saw the officer. "Yes, can I help you?" "Madam, I'm Officer Martinez with the Prescott Police Department. I'm here about a theft report involving an extension cord taken from Mr. Quinn's property." Her face flushed red. "This is an HOA matter, officer. It's not theft. It's enforcement of community standards." "Madam, did you take property from Mr. Quinn's residence without his permission?" "I confiscated equipment that violated HOA regulations." "That's not what I asked. Did you take an extension cord from his property?" Brenda's jaw tightened. "As HOA president, I have the authority to enforce our bylaws. This is harassment." "Madam, I need a yes or no answer. Did you take an extension cord from Mr. Quinn's property?" "Yes, but as I explained, it was within my authority as HOA president to do so." "No, madam, it wasn't. The HOA has no legal authority to seize personal property. That's theft under Arizona Revised Statutes Section 13-1802. Mr. Quinn has that item registered with our department, including serial numbers and proof of ownership. I need you to return it immediately." "This is ridiculous. I'm enforcing the rules that everyone agreed to when they purchased their homes." Officer Martinez's tone became firmer. "Madam, I'm not going to argue about HOA rules. You took someone's property without permission. That's theft. Return it now, or I'll have to place you under arrest and obtain a warrant to search your vehicle and home." Brenda's eyes went wide. "You can't arrest me for doing my job. You're not law enforcement, madam. You're a private citizen who took someone else's property. Return it now." She stood there for a moment, clearly weighing her options. I could see the calculation happening behind her eyes. Finally, she turned and stalked toward her car. She popped the trunk, grabbed my extension cord, and shoved it at my chest hard enough that I had to step back. There. Happy now? I examined the cord. It looked undamaged, and the serial number etching was still visible on both ends. Yes, thank you. This isn't over, Brenda hissed. I'll be bringing this up at the next board meeting. You'll be facing fines for multiple violations. Officer Martinez stepped forward. Madam, I'm going to give you a warning right now. If you attempt any retaliation against Mr. Quinn for filing this report, that's a separate crime. If you attempt to fine him or take any HOA action that could be construed as retaliation, he can file charges for criminal intimidation. Do you understand? You can't tell me how to run my HOA. I just did. And I'm documenting this entire interaction in my report. If Mr. Quinn reports any suspicious fines or actions from the HOA in the next few months, we'll be having a different conversation. Have a good day, madam. He tipped his head and walked back toward his patrol car. I followed him, cord in hand. Tom gave me a thumbs up and headed back to his truck. Officer Martinez, I really appreciate your help with this, he nodded. Keep that registration up to date. And document everything with the HOA from now on. Every email, every letter, every fine notice. If she does try to retaliate, you'll want a paper trail. People like that don't usually back down after one encounter. I'm getting that feeling. If she shows up on your property again without permission, call us immediately. That's trespassing. HOA president or not, she doesn't have special rights to enter your land. Will do. Thanks again. He drove off, and I returned home with my cord. The generator fired right back up, and I got back to work on my architectural drawings. But I couldn't shake the feeling that Officer Martinez was right. This wasn't over. Sure enough, 3 days later, after power had been restored to the neighborhood, I found a notice taped to my front door. It was printed on official HOA letterhead with Brenda's name prominently displayed as president. Notice of violation and fine assessment, it read in bold letters. Property owner William Quinn of 1243 Seguero Lane is hereby notified of the following violations. Section 12.4, Unauthorized external electrical equipment. Fine, $200. Section 8.2, Verbal harassment of HOA officer. Fine, $150. Section 15.7, Failure to maintain approved exterior appearance during equipment operation. Fine, $175. Total fines, $525. Payment due within 15 days. Failure to pay will result in additional penalties and potential lien placement on property. I read it twice, my blood pressure rising with each word. She had actually done it. Despite the police warning, despite being forced to return my property, she was retaliating with bogus fines. I took photos of the notice with my phone, making sure the date and time were visible, then went inside to scan it into my computer. I pulled out my HOA binder, the thick folder containing every piece of documentation related to our homeowners association. I had kept everything since purchasing the house 3 years ago. I found my original HOA agreement and read through sections 12, 8, and 15 carefully. Section 12.4 did mention exterior electrical equipment, but it specifically referred to permanent installations like satellite dishes and exterior lighting. Temporary use of generators during power outages wasn't mentioned at all. Section 8.2 covered harassment, but the definition required threatening behavior or hate speech, neither of which applied to me telling her she couldn't steal my property. Section 15.7 was about maintaining landscaping and exterior paint, nothing to do with equipment operation. Every single fine was fabricated or a gross misinterpretation of the rules. I drafted a detailed response letter, citing the specific bylaw language and explaining why each fine was invalid. I included references to Arizona state law regarding HOA authority limitations and mentioned the police report from the theft incident. I kept the tone professional but firm, and I made it clear I would not be paying any of these fines. I sent it via certified mail so I'd have proof of delivery. 2 weeks passed quietly. I thought maybe my letter had done the trick and Brenda had backed off. Then I got a call from my mortgage company. "Mr. Quinn, this is Sandra from Valley Home Loans. We're calling about a lien notification we received regarding your property at 1243 Seguero Lane." My stomach dropped. "A lien? What kind of lien?" "It's from your homeowners association. They're claiming unpaid fines and fees totaling $525 plus an additional $300 in late fees and administrative costs. The total lien amount is $825. That lien is fraudulent. Those fines are invalid, and I sent a detailed response explaining why I'm not paying them. Mr. Quinn, I understand there may be a dispute, but a recorded lien affects your mortgage. You'll need to resolve this with your HOA. If the lien isn't released, it could impact your ability to refinance or sell, and if it goes unpaid long enough, the HOA could potentially foreclose. Foreclose? Over fake fines? I'm just explaining the legal possibilities. I'd recommend getting an attorney involved if you believe the lien is improper. After hanging up, I sat at my kitchen table, trying to process what was happening. Brenda had actually filed a lien against my house, over a generator cord, during a power outage. After the police had already intervened and confirmed she had committed theft, I called my friend Marcus Webb, who was a real estate attorney in Phoenix. We'd gone to college together at Arizona State University and had stayed in touch over the years. I explained the entire situation, from the initial theft to the retaliatory fines to the lien. Marcus listened quietly, then let out a low whistle. "Will, this is bad. She's way over the line here. HOAs do have the power to fine and lien, but there are strict procedures they have to follow, and the fines have to be legitimate. What you're describing sounds like abuse of authority and possibly extortion. What can I do?" "First, I'll draft a demand letter to the HOA requiring them to release the lien immediately and provide a detailed explanation for each fine with specific bylaw citations. Second, we'll file a complaint with the Arizona Department of Real Estate. They oversee HOA licensing and can investigate abuse. Third, if she doesn't back down, we sue. You'd have grounds for wrongful lien, abuse of process, and possibly defamation if she's been talking to other homeowners about you. How much is this going to cost me? For a friend. Let's start with the demand letter and the complaint. I'll do those at cost, maybe $500. If we have to sue, it gets expensive, but if your case is as clear-cut as it sounds, we can ask the court to make them pay your attorney fees when we win. Do it. I'm not letting her get away with this." Marcus got to work immediately. Within 3 days, Brenda received a demand letter via certified mail and process server. The letter laid out all the problems with her actions in clear legal language and gave her 10 days to release the lien and rescind the fines, or face a lawsuit. During those 10 days, I started hearing from other neighbors. Tom stopped by one evening with his wife, Carol. "Will, we heard about the lien," Carol said, holding a casserole dish. She was always bringing food to neighbors, a habit from her days running a catering business. "That woman is insane. She's been targeting anyone who stands up to her. How many people has she fined?" Tom counted on his fingers. "Us, the Hendersons 2 doors down, the Ramirez family on Cactus Street, old Mr. Chen, The newlyweds with the dog, probably a dozen families at least. Most of them just paid because they didn't want the hassle. How much has she collected? Thousands. Nobody knows exactly where the money is going either. The HOA treasury reports she presents at meetings are vague as hell. That got my attention. Is she stealing from the HOA funds? Carol nodded. We've suspected it for a while. The line items don't add up. She claims we spent $5,000 on landscaping last quarter, but the common areas look the same as always. Says we spent $3,000 on legal fees, but for what? Nobody's seen any lawyers. You need to request a full financial audit. The bylaws should have a provision for that. Tom pulled out his phone and showed me a document. They do. Says any 10 homeowners can petition for an independent audit. We've been gathering signatures. Got 17 so far. Add my name to that list. Over the next few days, I connected with more neighbors who had been fined or harassed by Brenda. Each story was worse than the last. She'd fine the Hendersons for parking their car on the street overnight when their garage door opener broke. She'd fine the Ramirez family because their teenage son's basketball hoop was allegedly 3 inches over the height limit. She'd fined elderly Mr. Chen because his recycling bin was visible from the street on a non-collection day, even though he'd been sick and forgot to bring it in. Every fine was petty, technical, or outright false, and every homeowner who had challenged her had received more fines in retaliation. Several had paid just to make it stop. Others were still fighting but felt overwhelmed. I organized a meeting at my house. 23 homeowners showed up, filling my living room and spilling into the kitchen. I'd never seen this level of turnout for anything HOA related. Thanks for coming, everyone, I started. I think we all know why we're here. Brenda Whitmore has been abusing her authority as HOA president, and we need to stop her. A woman I recognized as Jennifer Anderson, who lived on Desert Vista Court, raised her hand. How? She controls the board. The other 2 members just rubber stamp whatever she wants. First, we're pushing for a full financial audit. Tom and Carol have a petition going around. If you haven't signed it yet, see them before you leave tonight. Second, we document everything. Every fine, every interaction, every inconsistency in her enforcement. We build a case that shows a pattern of abuse. Third, we support each other. If one of us gets hit with a bogus fine, the rest of us back them up with witness statements and evidence. She's been picking us off one by one. That ends now. A younger guy named Chris Martinez spoke up. What about removing her as president? Can we force a recall election? I'd researched this already. Yes. According to our bylaws, a special election can be called if 20% of homeowners sign a petition. We have 62 homes in this development, so we'd need 13 signatures. I'm guessing everyone in this room alone would sign. The energy in the room shifted. People started talking excitedly, sharing their own ideas and strategies. We formed committees. One group would handle the audit petition. Another would work on the recall petition. A third would compile all the documentation of Brenda's violations and abuse. A fourth would research Arizona HOA law and homeowner rights. As people were leaving, Jennifer pulled me aside. Will, I should tell you something. I work as a paralegal at a law firm in Prescott Valley. I've been reviewing some of the HOA financial records that are supposed to be public. There are some really concerning discrepancies. Like what? Brenda's been writing checks to a landscaping company called Desert Dreams Landscaping. Big checks. But I looked up the business registration with the state. Want to guess who owns Desert Dreams? No way. Her husband, Robert Whitmore. She's been funneling HOA money to her own family business. That's textbook embezzlement. Can you prove it? I can show the payments and the business registration. Whether the landscaping work was actually done at the level claimed, that would take the audit. But the conflict of interest alone is a huge problem. She never disclosed it to the homeowners. Jennifer, would you be willing to present this information to the group? And maybe to my lawyer? Absolutely. This needs to stop. After everyone left, I called Marcus and filled him in on the financial irregularities Jennifer had discovered. He was very interested. Will, if she's embezzling HOA funds, that's criminal. We're not just talking about a civil lawsuit anymore. That's theft, fraud, possibly racketeering if she's been doing it systematically over time. You need to report this to the police. Will they take it seriously? It's an HOA dispute. The theft aspect, they'll definitely take seriously. HOAs handle real money. If she's been stealing thousands of dollars, that's a felony. Call that officer who helped you before, Martinez. Tell him what you found. I reached out to Officer Martinez the next morning. He remembered me and agreed to meet at a coffee shop downtown to discuss the situation informally. I brought Jennifer along with her documentation. Officer Martinez reviewed the papers carefully, taking notes. This is concerning. If what you're showing me is accurate, there's probable cause for fraud investigation. I'd need to bring this to our financial crimes unit. They'd want to see more documentation, probably interview multiple homeowners, and potentially get a warrant for the HOA's bank records. Jennifer pulled out more papers. I have 6 months of financial reports that Brenda filed with the homeowners, and I've cross-referenced them with the state business records. Desert Dreams Landscaping received $28,000 from the HOA in that period. The contracts aren't specific about what work was done or when, and I drove around the neighborhood this morning taking photos of all our common areas. I've lived here for 5 years. Nothing has changed. No new plants, no new irrigation, no improvements. Where did that money actually go? Officer Martinez looked at me. Are you willing to file an official complaint about the financial irregularities? Absolutely. I'll need statements from multiple homeowners confirming the lack of landscaping improvements and copies of any financial documents you can legally obtain as HOA members. The more evidence you can provide upfront, the stronger the case for getting a warrant. Over the next week, we worked like crazy. The audit petition reached the required number of signatures, and we submitted it to the HOA board formally via certified mail. The recall petition got 28 signatures in 3 days. The documentation committee compiled a 70-page report detailing every questionable fine, every inconsistent enforcement, and every interaction where Brenda had threatened or retaliated against homeowners. Jennifer worked with 5 other homeowners who had accounting or financial backgrounds to create a detailed analysis of the HOA's money trail. Meanwhile, Marcus's 10-day deadline for the lien release came and went. Brenda didn't respond at all. So we filed the lawsuit in Yavapai County Superior Court. The complaint asked for the lien to be released, the fines to be rescinded, damages for emotional distress and harm to my credit, attorney fees, and punitive damages for willful misconduct. The day after Brenda was served with the lawsuit, she called an emergency HOA board meeting. According to the bylaws, she had to give 48 hours notice to all homeowners. The notice she sent out was hostile and defensive. It claimed that a small group of malcontents was trying to undermine the HOA's authority, and that strict action would be taken against anyone who continued to interfere with board operations. The meeting was scheduled for Thursday evening at 7 p.m. in the community clubhouse. Nearly 50 homeowners showed up, far more than the space was designed to hold. People stood along the walls and in the doorway. The energy was tense. Brenda sat at the head table with the 2 other board members, Gary Fletcher and Deanne Morrison. Gary was a 60-something engineer who mostly kept quiet and went along with whatever Brenda wanted. Deanne was a yoga instructor in her 40s who seemed perpetually checked out. Brenda banged a gavel on the table. "This meeting will come to order. We have a serious problem in this community." Several residents have been spreading false information and making baseless accusations against the board. This behavior is unacceptable and will result in fines for defamation under Section 9.3 of our bylaws. Tom stood up from the back. "Point of order. Section 9.3 doesn't mention defamation. It's about noise violations." Brenda's face reddened. "I don't need corrections from the audience. Sit down." "No, I don't think I will. We're homeowners here and we have a right to speak." "We submitted a petition for a financial audit signed by 17 homeowners, well over the required minimum. When will that audit be scheduled?" "The board has reviewed that petition and determined it's unnecessary. Our finances are in perfect order." Jennifer stood up next. "You don't get to determine if it's necessary. The bylaws say the board must comply with a properly submitted audit petition within 30 days. We submitted ours 6 days ago. Miss Anderson, if you continue to disrupt this meeting, you'll be fined." "For what?" Citing the bylaws, I stood up. "Brenda, we also submitted a recall petition with 28 signatures. That's well over the 20% threshold required. When will the recall election be scheduled?" Brenda slammed her gavel down hard. "There will be no recall election. That petition is invalid." "On what grounds?" "Multiple grounds. Improper format, invalid signatures, failure to follow procedure." Marcus, who had come to the meeting as my attorney, stood up. He was wearing a suit and carried a briefcase, looking very official. "Mrs. Whitmore, I'm Marcus Webb, attorney for Mr. Quinn and several other homeowners in this room. I've reviewed the recall petition personally. It meets every requirement specified in your bylaws. You have no legal basis to reject it." "Who are you to tell me what's legal? This is an HOA matter." "Actually, it's a contract law matter. Your bylaws form a binding contract with the homeowners. If you violate that contract, you can be sued. In fact, you already are being sued. My client filed a complaint this week regarding your wrongful lien placement and retaliatory fines. We'll be happy to add failure to hold a legitimate recall election to that complaint if necessary." Brenda's hands were shaking now. "This is a witch hunt. You people are trying to destroy me because I actually enforce the rules, unlike previous presidents who let this neighborhood go to hell." An older woman named Patricia Simmons stood up. "Brenda, I've lived here for 15 years. This neighborhood has always been fine. You're the one causing problems. You've fined half the people in this room for ridiculous reasons. You've filed liens. You've threatened people. And now we're finding out you've been paying your husband's company thousands of dollars in HOA funds for work that was never done. That's fraud. How dare you? Desert Dreams did excellent work on our common areas." "What work?" Patricia gestured broadly. "Name one thing that's been improved in the last 6 months." Brenda sputtered but couldn't seem to come up with a specific answer. "Maintenance, upkeep, various projects." Tom pulled out his phone. "I've got photos from a year ago and photos from today of every common area in this development. Want to compare them side by side? Because I don't see any differences." The room erupted in conversation. People were angry, shouting questions at Brenda. She kept banging her gavel, but nobody was paying attention anymore. Gary, the other board member, suddenly spoke up. "Brenda, maybe we should consider the audit request. If our finances are in order like you say, an audit would prove that." She whipped her head toward him. "Gary, we discussed this. The board votes no." "Actually, we didn't discuss it. You told Deanne and me what we were voting for." That's not the same thing. I'm changing my vote. I vote yes to the audit. Deanne looked uncomfortable. I think maybe Gary's right. An audit would clear everything up. Brenda looked betrayed. You're both voting against me. We're voting for transparency, Gary said firmly. And I also think we should schedule the recall election. If the petition is valid, we have to honor it. That's what the bylaws require. Brenda gathered her papers roughly, shoving them into a folder. Fine. Do whatever you want. I'm not going to sit here and be attacked. This meeting is adjourned. She stormed out of the clubhouse, leaving Gary and Deanne sitting at the table looking shell-shocked. Gary addressed the room. Okay, everyone, let's try to stay calm. As remaining board members, Deanne and I will schedule the audit and the recall election. Give us a week to make arrangements and we'll send out formal notices. Is that acceptable? The room murmured agreement. People started to file out, talking excitedly among themselves. Marcus pulled me aside. That went better than expected. She's cracking. When people like her lose control, they make mistakes. What happens now with the lawsuit? We keep moving forward. Her walking out of that meeting doesn't change anything. If anything, it strengthens our case that she's acting irrationally and inappropriately. The next day, I got a call from Officer Martinez. Mr. Quinn, I wanted to let you know that our financial crimes unit has opened an investigation into Mrs. Whitmore and the HOA finances. They'll be reaching out to homeowners for statements and requesting documentation. I wanted to give you a heads up. That was fast. Your neighbor Jennifer provided some pretty compelling evidence of potential fraud. When we ran background checks, we also found that Mrs. Whitmore has a prior criminal record from Nevada. She was convicted of writing bad checks 12 years ago. Given that history plus the current allegations, the detective assigned to the case thinks there's probable cause to dig deeper. She has a criminal record. For financial crimes, yes. Not a great look for someone in charge of community funds. Thanks for letting me know. One more thing. If she contacts you directly trying to settle or make deals, record the conversations if you're legally allowed. Arizona is a one-party consent state, so you can record any conversation you're part of without telling her. Anything she says could be useful. I thanked him and hung up. The news about Brenda's criminal history spread through the neighborhood rapidly. By that evening, 3 more homeowners had contacted Marcus about joining the lawsuit. The recall petition gained another 15 signatures from people who hadn't initially signed. True to his word, Gary scheduled the audit and the recall election. He hired an independent accounting firm from Flagstaff to conduct the audit, specifically choosing one from outside Prescott to avoid any conflicts of interest. The recall election was scheduled for 3 weeks out, with early voting available for anyone who couldn't attend in person. Brenda didn't go quietly. She sent out a mass email to all homeowners calling the audit a waste of money and claiming Gary and Deanne had betrayed the community. She announced she was running again in the recall election and urged everyone to vote for her to stop the chaos and restore order. The email backfired spectacularly. Multiple homeowners forwarded it to Marcus, pointing out the threatening tone and the false claims. Marcus added it to our evidence file. The audit took 2 weeks. The accounting firm requested full access to all HOA bank accounts, credit card statements, receipts, contracts, and financial records. Gary provided everything he could access. Brenda initially refused to cooperate, claiming the audit was illegal. The accounting firm told her bluntly that refusing to provide records she was legally required to maintain as HOA president could result in criminal charges. She reluctantly turned over boxes of paperwork. During this time, the detective from the Financial Crimes Unit, Detective Sarah Park, interviewed me and about 20 other homeowners. She was thorough, professional, and clearly very experienced with fraud investigations. She asked detailed questions about the HOA's operations, Brenda's behavior, the fines and fees collected, and the landscaping payments. Mr. Quinn, in your experience, has there been any noticeable improvement to the common areas that would justify $28,000 in landscaping expenses over 6 months? None that I've seen. The grass gets mowed regularly, but it always has. There are no new plants, no new features, no repairs to the irrigation system that I know of. I jog through this neighborhood every morning. It looks exactly the same as when I moved in 3 years ago. Have you ever seen Desert Dreams landscaping trucks or workers in the neighborhood? Never. I asked around. Nobody has. She made notes. That's consistent with what others have told me. Thank you. 3 days before the recall election, the audit results came back. Gary called another community meeting to present the findings. This time, even more people attended. We had to hold the meeting outside in the clubhouse courtyard. The accountant, a serious-looking man named Robert Chen, presented the results using a projector and screen. His tone was matter-of-fact, but the numbers told a damning story. Over the past 18 months, the HOA paid Desert Dreams Landscaping a total of $54,000. However, we could find no evidence that the scope of work described in the contracts was ever completed. In fact, we could find no evidence that Desert Dreams sent any workers to this property at all. We attempted to contact Desert Dreams directly at the phone number and address listed on the contracts. The phone number is disconnected. The address is a UPS store mailbox. The business is registered to Robert Whitmore, husband of Brenda Whitmore, but Mr. Whitmore did not respond to our requests for documentation of work performed. The courtyard was silent. Robert continued. Additionally, we found $12,000 in fines collected from homeowners that were not properly documented or justified under the HOA bylaws. These fines were deposited into the HOA account, but then transferred to a separate account at a different bank. We were unable to obtain records for that second account as it is not listed as an official HOA account. Mrs. Whitmore claims it's a reserve fund, but there's no mention of any such reserve fund in the HOA bylaws or in any board meeting minutes. He clicked to another slide. We also found that Mrs. Whitmore has been paying herself a salary of $2,500 per month as HOA president. The bylaws specify that board members are volunteers and should not receive compensation except for reimbursement of specific expenses. We found no authorization for this salary in any board minutes or homeowner votes. People started shouting. The numbers on the screen told the story clearly. Brenda had stolen at least $66,000 from the HOA over 18 months, probably more if the second account could be fully investigated. Gary held up his hands. Everyone, please. I know this is upsetting. The board has already referred this matter to the police. Detective Park has all of this information. We'll also be filing a civil claim to try to recover the stolen funds. Jennifer stood up. What about the recall election? Is Brenda even eligible to run given these findings? Robert Chen answered. That's not my area of expertise, but I would say someone under investigation for embezzlement probably shouldn't be in a position of financial authority. Gary nodded. Brenda's name will remain on the ballot since it was added before the audit results came out. But the board is formally recommending that homeowners vote for one of the other candidates. There were 3 other candidates who had stepped forward to run: Tom Patterson, Jennifer Anderson, and a retired accountant named Louis Ramirez. All 3 were well respected in the community and had been vocal critics of Brenda's overreach. The recall election took place on a Saturday. We had the highest turnout in the HOA's history. 58 of the 62 homeowners cast ballots. The results were announced that evening. Jennifer Anderson. 32 votes Tom Patterson. 18 votes Luis Ramirez. 6 votes Brenda Whitmore. 2 votes Brenda had received exactly 2 votes, presumably her own and maybe her husband's, though Robert Whitmore didn't actually live in the development and shouldn't have been eligible to vote. Jennifer was sworn in as the new HOA president. One of her first acts was to formally rescind all the bogus fines Brenda had issued, including mine. She also filed paperwork with the county to release all the liens Brenda had placed. My mortgage company called a week later to confirm the lien was gone, but the legal issues were far from over for Brenda. Detective Park completed her investigation and presented the findings to the Yavapai County Attorney's Office. They decided to file criminal charges. 2 months after the recall election, Brenda Whitmore was arrested at her home and charged with 3 felony counts: theft, fraud, and fraudulent schemes. The arrest warrant alleged she had stolen more than $66,000 from the HOA through fake landscaping contracts, unauthorized salary payments, and misappropriation of fine money. Robert Whitmore was charged as an accomplice for his role in the fake landscaping company. The local news covered the story. Former HOA president arrested for embezzlement ran on the evening broadcast. Several homeowners, including me, were interviewed. I kept my comments brief. She abused her position of trust. She targeted people who disagreed with her with bogus fines and threats. She stole money from her own neighbors. I'm glad she's facing consequences. The criminal case moved through the system slowly, as these things do. Brenda hired an expensive defense attorney from Phoenix who tried to argue that the HOA bookkeeping was just sloppy, not criminal. But the evidence was overwhelming. The fake company, the undocumented work, the secret account, the unauthorized salary, it all pointed to deliberate theft. Meanwhile, Marcus moved forward with our civil lawsuit. With the criminal charges filed, Brenda's attorney actually reached out to discuss settlement. They offered to release the lien, rescind the fines, and pay $5,000 in damages to make the case go away. Marcus laughed. Counteroffer. She pays $30,000 in damages, all attorney fees, and she signs an agreement never to hold any HOA position in Arizona again. She'll never agree to that. Then we'll see her in court. They came back a week later and agreed to $15,000 in damages, all attorney fees, and a prohibition on HOA service. Marcus consulted with me. It's not everything we asked for, but it's a solid win. The attorney fees alone are going to be substantial. And keeping her out of HOAs permanently has value beyond money. What do you think? Take it. I want this over with. We settled. The lien was officially released. I received a check for $15,000 and Marcus's fees were paid in full. Brenda signed the agreement barring her from any HOA position in the state. The criminal case went to trial 8 months after her arrest. I attended several days of the trial as a witness and spectator. The prosecution laid out the evidence methodically. The fake landscaping company, the invoices for work never performed, the transfers to the secret account, the unauthorized salary payments. They brought in homeowners to testify about the unchanged common areas and the lack of any actual landscaping work. They presented bank records showing money flowing from the HOA account to the fake company to accounts controlled by Brenda and Robert. The defense tried to claim it was all a misunderstanding, that Brenda was disorganized but not criminal. They portrayed her as a dedicated volunteer overwhelmed by the responsibilities. But the paper trail was too clear, and her prior conviction for writing bad checks undermined any claim that this was innocent incompetence. The jury deliberated for 3 hours and found her guilty on all counts. Robert was found guilty as an accomplice. At sentencing 2 months later, the judge was not sympathetic. "Mrs. Whitmore, you held a position of trust in your community. Your neighbors elected you to protect their interests and manage their collective funds. Instead, you stole from them systematically and repeatedly. You retaliated against anyone who questioned your actions. You filed false liens against their homes. This was not a momentary lapse in judgment. This was sustained criminal conduct over more than a year. The amount stolen was substantial, and the harm to your community goes beyond the financial loss. You destroyed trust and caused significant stress to dozens of families." She sentenced Brenda to 4 years in state prison, with credit for time served. Robert received 2 years. They were also ordered to pay full restitution of $66,000 to the HOA, plus additional fines and fees. Jennifer did an excellent job rebuilding the HOA. She instituted monthly financial reports that were transparent and detailed. She created a process for homeowners to appeal fines through an independent review panel. She limited fine amounts to reasonable levels and eliminated most of the petty rules Brenda had tried to implement. She even organized neighborhood events like a summer barbecue and a holiday lights contest, bringing people together instead of driving them apart. The HOA sued Brenda and Robert in civil court to recover the stolen funds. They won a judgment, but collecting it was difficult. Most of the stolen money was gone, spent on luxury purchases and travel. The HOA did manage to get about $20,000 back by placing liens on Brenda's house and eventually forcing a sale, but the full restitution would probably never be recovered. On a personal level, I was relieved to have it all behind me. The whole ordeal had lasted more than a year from the day Brenda stole my generator cord to the day she was sentenced to prison. It had been stressful, expensive despite winning the lawsuit, and time-consuming. But I learned important lessons. I learned the value of documenting everything, of registering my property with serial numbers, of standing up to bullies even when it's easier to just pay the fine and move on. I learned that HOAs can do tremendous damage when the wrong person gets into power, but that homeowners have rights and remedies if they're willing to fight. I also learned that neighbors can come together when facing a common threat. The relationships I built during the fight against Brenda became real friendships. Tom and Carol invited me over for dinner regularly. Jennifer and I served on the HOA board together after the recall. Lewis organized a neighborhood watch program that actually made our community safer. One afternoon about a year after Brenda's sentencing, I was in my garage organizing tools when Tom walked over. "Hey, Will, I'm firing up the grill tonight. Want to come over? Couple of other neighbors will be there." "Sure. What can I bring?" "Just yourself." "Oh, and bring that generator cord story. New neighbors moved in down the street, and they don't believe me when I tell them what happened." I laughed. It does sound pretty crazy when you say it out loud. HOA president steals a generator cord and ends up in prison. The craziest part is it all could have been avoided. If she'd just left your damn cord alone, we never would have looked closely at the finances. She could have kept stealing for years. Greed and arrogance. Bad combination. Tom nodded. "See you at 6. I'll be there." That evening, I walked down to Tom's house with a 6-pack of local Arizona beer. About a dozen neighbors were there, including the new couple, Dan and Marie Keller, who had just moved from Colorado. The smell of burgers and hot dogs filled the air, and kids were running around in the backyard. Dan approached me with a curious smile. Tom tells me you're the one who took down the evil HOA president. I thought that was an exaggeration until Jennifer showed me the news articles. It wasn't just me. A lot of people in this neighborhood stood up to her. I just happened to be the first one she went after who didn't back down. Still impressive. We were worried about the HOA when we bought here. We had a nightmare HOA in Colorado, constant fines for stupid stuff. But Jennifer seems great. She is. Things are a lot better now. Marie joined us, holding a glass of wine. What made you decide to fight instead of just paying the fines? Most people would have just paid and moved on. I thought about that. Principle, I guess. She was wrong. What she did was theft, not enforcement. And I had registered my property properly, so I knew I could prove ownership. But honestly, I didn't know it would blow up into everything it became. I just wanted my extension cord back. Everyone laughed. It had become a running joke in the neighborhood. The generator cord that brought down a criminal HOA president. Later that night, after I'd gone home, I sat on my back patio looking at the stars. The Arizona sky was clear and beautiful, stretching out endlessly above me. I thought about how a single moment, a single decision to stand up and say, no, this isn't right, had changed everything. Not just for me, but for dozens of families in this neighborhood. My generator sat in the garage, maintained and ready for the next power outage. The yellow extension cord was coiled neatly next to it, the serial number still clearly etched on both ends. I'd never forget to register important property again. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through the photos I'd taken during the whole ordeal. The notice of violation taped to my door. The lien paperwork. The audit results. The news coverage of Brenda's arrest. I'd kept it all, partially as a record, partially as a reminder. Jennifer had asked me to speak at the next HOA meeting about homeowner rights and the importance of documentation. I'd agreed. New people moved into the neighborhood regularly, and they deserved to know their rights, to understand what an HOA could and couldn't do, and to know they didn't have to accept abuse of authority. My phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. Hey, just closed another HOA abuse case. Used your case as precedent. Thanks for fighting the good fight. I smiled and texted back. Glad it helped. How'd it turn out? Client 1. Bogus fines thrown out. HOA president removed, restitution paid. Your case is becoming legend in HOA law circles. All because of a generator cord. All because you stood your ground. Most people don't. That's why bullies like Brenda get away with it. I set my phone down and looked back at the stars. Marcus was right. Standing your ground mattered. Refusing to be bullied mattered. Demanding accountability mattered. It wasn't easy and it wasn't quick, but it was necessary. The neighborhood had transformed over the past year. People actually attended HOA meetings now, interested and engaged rather than fearful and avoidant. The budget was transparent. The rules were reasonable and consistently enforced. Fines were rare and proportionate. The common areas were properly maintained with real contractors who actually did the work they were paid for. Jennifer had even managed to get a small rebate issued to all homeowners. With proper budgeting and the recovery of some of the stolen funds, the HOA had a surplus for the first time in years. Every household received a $150 check, a small but meaningful gesture that showed the organization was actually working for the homeowners, not against them. I heard a generator humming in the distance. Someone else was testing their equipment, making sure it was ready when needed. After everything that had happened, several neighbors had bought generators. We'd even discussed installing a community generator for the clubhouse, funded by the HOA, so there would be a central location for people to charge phones and store medication if the power went out for an extended period. It was the kind of practical, helpful project an HOA should undertake. My lawyer Marcus had told me that my case was now being cited in Arizona legal journals and used in HOA law courses. The case of Quinn v. Whitmore had established several important precedents: that HOA presidents could not claim immunity for criminal acts committed under color of authority, that serial number registration with police created a strong presumption of ownership, that retaliatory fines could be challenged both civilly and criminally, and that homeowners had standing to demand financial audits even over board objections. None of that would have happened if I just paid the bogus fines and moved on. None of it would have happened if I hadn't registered my generator and coored with the police. None of it would have happened if Officer Martinez hadn't taken the initial theft report seriously. Small decisions made properly had cascading effects. I thought about Brenda, sitting in a prison cell somewhere. I didn't take pleasure in her incarceration, but I didn't feel sorry for her either. She had made deliberate choices to steal, to abuse her authority, to retaliate against anyone who questioned her. She'd had multiple opportunities to back down, to apologize, to make things right. She'd chosen escalation instead. The criminal justice system had worked, eventually. The civil system had worked. The HOA's own bylaws, once properly invoked, had worked. But all of it required people willing to act, to document, to persist despite intimidation and harassment. I made a mental note to reach out to Patricia Simmons. She'd been one of the strongest voices pushing for accountability, and I wanted to thank her properly. She was in her 70s and had stood in that contentious board meeting calling Brenda out for fraud when many younger homeowners had been too intimidated to speak. Her courage had mattered. So many people had played crucial roles: Tom and Carol gathering signatures, Jennifer discovering the financial irregularities and having the expertise to recognize them, Gary finding his spine and standing up to Brenda when it counted, Officer Martinez taking the initial report seriously and following through, Detective Park conducting a thorough investigation, the accountant Robert Chen documenting everything precisely, Marcus fighting the legal battle. It was a reminder that change rarely comes from one person alone. It takes a community, each person contributing what they can, supporting each other through the difficult parts. My phone buzzed again. This time it was a message from the neighborhood email group sent by Jennifer. Reminder: HOA meeting Thursday 7 p.m. Agenda: budget review, proposed playground upgrade and community garden discussion. Refreshments provided. Hope to see you there. I marked my calendar. I'd attend like I did every month now. Engaged homeowners made for better HOAs. We'd learned that lesson the hard way. The night air was cooling off, typical for Prescott evenings even in summer. I heard a dog barking a few streets over, children laughing somewhere in the distance, a car driving slowly past on patrol, probably one of the neighbors doing their neighborhood watch rounds. Normal, peaceful community sounds. The way it should be. I thought about drafting a guide for homeowners dealing with HOA abuse. Something practical, with step-by-step instructions, sample letters, legal citations, and contact information for relevant agencies. Marcus had suggested it, and several people from other neighborhoods had reached out asking for advice after reading about my case. Maybe that was my next project, a way to help others avoid what I'd gone through, or at least to navigate it more effectively if they found themselves in similar situations. The stars continued their slow rotation overhead. Somewhere out there, Brenda was likely reflecting on her choices too, though probably with more regret than I felt satisfaction. 4 years was a long time to think about how a simple theft of a generator cord had unraveled an entire criminal enterprise. I wondered if she understood, even now, that the theft itself wasn't really the problem. It was the principle. It was the arrogance of believing she could take whatever she wanted, fine whoever she wanted, threaten whoever she wanted without consequences. It was the systematic abuse of trust and authority. The generator cord was just the visible symptom of a deeper corruption. If it hadn't been my cord, it would have been something else eventually. Someone else would have pushed back. The embezzlement would have been discovered. The pattern of abuse would have become undeniable, or maybe not. Maybe if I just paid those initial fines, Brenda would still be in power, still stealing, still bullying. The thought made me uncomfortable. How many people had paid fines they shouldn't have, just to avoid conflict? How much money had Brenda stolen before I caught her? I'd never know for sure. The audit only went back 18 months because records before that were incomplete. Detective Park had told me that based on the evidence, Brenda had likely been stealing since she was elected, which meant the real total was probably much higher than $66,000. My contribution to stopping her wasn't heroic. It was simply refusing to accept injustice when it knocked on my door. Or rather, when it walked onto my property and took my things. I finished my beer and stood up, stretching. It was late, nearly midnight. Tomorrow was a workday, and I had architectural plans to finalize for a client in Phoenix. Life had moved on, as it always does. The HOA drama was behind us, replaced by normal neighborhood concerns like playground equipment and community gardens. As I walked inside, I took one last look at my garage. The generator sat there, reliable and ready. The extension cord coiled beside it, serial numbers intact. Tools organized on pegboards, each one marked with my information. I'd learned to be meticulous about documentation, about registration, about evidence. Those habits had served me well in this situation, and they'd serve me well in the future if I ever faced something similar. But more than that, I'd learned that standing up for what's right, even when it's inconvenient, even when it's risky, even when it would be easier to just pay the fine and move on, that matters. It matters for you, it matters for your neighbors, and it matters for the community. The generator cord incident had become a story told to new neighbors, a cautionary tale, a reminder of how quickly power can corrupt and how important accountability is. But it was also a story of hope, of a community coming together, of justice prevailing, and of one person's decision to say, no, this isn't right, and mean it. I locked the door, turned off the lights, and headed to bed. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new projects, new opportunities. But tonight, I could rest knowing that when it mattered, when I was tested, I'd stood my ground. And that made all the difference.